So working on the next fault with the Evora is an electronic fault that's certainly not unheard with them. The traction control light has come up. These are relatively sensitive on the Evora, and there's really two causes, or there can be two causes, or at least common causes. One is the brake light switch, which is a combination of a brake light and a function within that switch that turns functions on in the traction control. And the other one is the steering wheel angle sensor, or the steering angle sensor. Both are relatively well-known issues with them. I first off attempted having basically a play around with the brake light switch. I replaced it with a used part that I found, the cheapest chips. They're common. If you Google it, you'll find the part number. I got my one off a Opel Astra G. It's a very common General Motors part. I've got it here, but close up, there's nothing special with it. So I replaced that and still had the same issue. So I thought, all right, all the research I'd done said, all right, you possibly need the steering wheel angle sensor or the steering angle sensor calibrated. I had that calibrated. Luckily, there's actually an agent in New Zealand that's got the Lotus Tech tool. You can only use the Lotus Tech tool. No other scanners will do it that I'm aware of. So luckily enough, we actually had one available. So I had that and basically cleared all the fault codes, took it for a drive, same issue, and it came up with steering angle sensor again, which is indicating that it's actually the sensor rather than the sensor needing calibrating. So this video is really about pulling that steering angle sensor out, and we'll just play with that. I'm going to try and do it without taking the steering column out, or the complete column. I only want to take the lower section of the column out by undoing the lower section off the rack and actually moving it, or moving the lower section of the column on the slip jointed sleeve. I prefer not to take the whole column out if I can. I have to bring this up because this is a lovely piece of Lotus tech literature here. I read this and I couldn't believe actually that that's what they're telling me to do. So, step 1 on removal. Remove steering column assembly. Right, I don't want to do that. I know better than Lotus. Number 2, note only 2 of the 3 fixings securing the sensor to the mounting bracket are accessible. Yeah, I saw that. Step 2, release the 2 accessible crosshead screws and break off the other one. That's just lovely. So the first step in removing the sensor, I'm just going to call it the sensor because I always get mucked up when I call it the steering angle sensor. So the first step in removing the sensor is basically taking the seat out. So to take the seat out, or the driver's seat, it's quite simply, 4 bolts with some Allen keys, or 4 4 Allen key bolts, and there's some electrical connectors. So you just need like a small screwdriver basically to push the locking mechanisms on the connectors. The connectors are for the seatbelt sensor and the heated seats. So you basically undo the 4 bolts, you tilt the seat over, that allows you access to the bottom. Alright, so move the seat right forward and tilt the seat right forward as well. That allows you access to these bolts here. That's one out. There's a washer underneath that, but we can get to that afterwards.
1, 2, that's out. Slide the seat right back as far as it will go. That gives you access to the front ones. Not quite enough. It shouldn't be too tight. 1, 2, 3. It's 4 bolts out. Alright, and then we can just lift the seat, we tilt it over. That gives us access underneath. There's some little plugs here with some locking. Just push the tab, that's one out. Two out. 3 out. And then we just lift this out. So you can see in here, these were the electrical connectors, so that's for the seat belt, and I think those two there are for the heated seats. You got these washers that go under the seat, don't lose those, and they're a bit of a pain actually. Last time I put it in I misplaced one, so make sure you basically put them away somewhere safe. So this is filmed a little bit out of sequence, but what I found is that this angle sensor was not centralised in relation to the column. The bracket holding the angle sensor off was slightly in the wrong place, and I drilled out the rivets holding it on, put some washers underneath it to centralise it, and using riv nuts secured it back on. I also needed to undo the clamp that held the peg onto the column and slide that down the column a little bit because it wasn't fitting into the centre of the sensor either.
So now the seat's out, that's basically the work that we need to do inside of the car before I jack it up. Next step, jack the car up. Obviously we jack it up, take the under tray off, and that will give us access. Jacking point's pretty critical on these things, so look, I shouldn't need to tell you where to jack a car up from. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be doing this job.
So here the under tray comes. It does like collecting a fair bit of dirt, stones, and there we go. This is the view without the under tray on. Just be aware that these spaces here, so there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're not actually fixed on. They're just a spacer for the under tray, and quite often they fall off. And I think from memory there's some other ones around. Oh, out at the back here. These ones here. Where's my finger? Those ones there. You can see actually those are thinner. And they do. Whoop, see, there we go. It just fell off. So make sure that they actually go back on the right way. So there's 6 of them in total. So that's the lower column section. that we need to basically undo. So you can see there, this is the basically the rack, and that's the column, that's the firewall and the rubber sort of grommet up there. So we'll have a go at basically taking that one off there. So with the bolt undone between the rack and the column, basically you need to push the rubber grommet inwards towards the inside of the car, or the isolating sort of grommet that goes around the column. You push it inside the car. That should give you access basically to the second bolt in that universal joint. I've undone the lower joint, or the lower universal joint, and disconnected that. I've loosened the top bolt in the lower universal joint, and actually found that that lower universal joint came right off the column, which was great. So it's just left the column and the sort of lower shaft. Using the slip joint in the column, you can actually push the lower column quite a way back, and that allows you to get this big rubber grommet off. So you can see there, that's the one that goes through the firewall. You don't actually need to take off the lower column to get the steering angle sensor off. You can undo it and I think slide it all the way down the shaft. So I'm just about to do that and we'll see, which is great. So I've undone this bolt there, undone that bolt there, which has enabled me to remove this whole universal joint. When that is removed, there's basically a big rubber grommet in here. I've taken that out by pushing this whole shaft all the way up in it. It actually gives you enough room. It brings the length back to about there. You can take the grommet off, and that will actually enable me to pull the steering angle sensor, which is sort of positioned up around here, all the way down and off through this area here. Thought I was going to have to take this section out, but it's actually held in. There's some sort of pin or something up here which stops you pulling that right out. I thought I was going to have to take that off.
Cameras. Light. Cameras. Where is it? It's down here. Light. Cameras. How fast are you going? It does sound good. Why?
So we've finished the job now. You'll have to excuse our slightly shaky camera work. If you have any questions on anything about this job, please let me know in the questions below. Thanks for watching, and I'll keep you posted on any new developments or any other new jobs that I'm doing on this car.